name of our show.
And I think you can hear us now.
Hello.
That's the first time that's failed us in like 4 months.
It's been a while.
It has.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway, hi everybody.
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay.
This is The Large Glass, our show where we bring you a new artist or art-related topic every week. I'm Todd.
I'm Terri.
Sorry about that glitch. That problem, which haunted us for a little while, had gone away.
That's okay.
Well,
a glitch here and there.
It is what it is.
All right. It is what it is.
Yeah, it's the heat or the weather.
That's right.
Right. All right, so who's all here? We got Jess Park is here. 63 is here. Ben Hagenbush is here. Glenn is here. Boo Jazz is here.
Hey.
Ripple Flux is here. We got the whole crowd.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
It's a good hangout.
Thank you guys for coming. We have a really cool show for you tonight. We got a lot going on. So in the first half of our show, we are going to be reviewing. I must keep reminding myself of this, which is not what I'm telling myself, but the name of the show of Hamlett Dobbins' paintings at the Brownstone Art. So we're going to be doing a review of that. What follows that?
Well, what follows that is the work of Pam Glick. She's an awesome artist that we've really been diving deep into this week, so we're excited to present her to you as well.
There's David Backus. How's it going? So two halves of the show tonight. We've got Hamlett Dobbins, and then we've got Pam Glick.
Yeah.
Got a few other things to kind of go with, but we should drink.
We should drink. Darn it.
All right, so
yeah, let's do it.
What do we got tonight? Well, first of all, in honor of Hamlett Dobbins, we've got our Memphis mugs, which Hamlett sent to us. Thanks, Hamlett, if you're watching. I'm hoping you're here. There's Dave Schmidt. How's it going?
Hey.
So we got our Memphis mugs. And then, of course, in honor of Pam Glick, who is from New York, we have got some 6 Point. Terry's going to have the Bengali, and I am going to have the resin, which is going to appear completely clear on our green screen.
Ooh,
it's a ghost can.
It's magic beer.
Believe it or not, there is beer in here.
It's so magic. What's that? 10%?
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah. I'm going to go very slowly tonight because resin is heavy duty. All right, so here's a little for you.
Heavy. Thank you.
I got to tell you, last week's 50th episode with Christian Newen was awesome.
That was so
I had so much fun
I learned
on
so
that.
much. And you can talk to him forever and for hours about so many different things.
I know, that show could have been 3 hours long.
Easy.
It would have killed our viewers, but it would have been 3 hours long.
Yeah.
63 is like, be careful with the resin. So 63 knows what I'm getting myself into here.
Yes.
So I will go slowly. Dave is drinking Larchago Reserve 2012 Rioja.
Ooh.
Now, we had a Rioja last week for Christian's show because he wanted to drink a Spanish wine to go with his guitars.
Yeah, and that
so,
worked out really well.
Yeah, that was nice.
Yep.
All right. Well, here's to episode 51. Thank you all for being here. We're super excited to have you.
Cheers.
Cheers. I'm curious. I've had this before.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's got a really, really citrusy, hoppy. It's refreshing. I have a feeling it's going to throw me under the table.
Yes, it might.
But all right, so a couple of surprises tonight. Number one, we are going to be doing a giveaway. So the first thing I want to do is I want to get that rolling now, and I've got an hour time limit on the giveaway for tonight. and we're going to be giving away one of our very own t-shirts. Yay! You get a large glass t-shirt.
That's right.
If you're drawn in the raffle. Now,
your friends are going to be so jealous.
your friends are going to be so jealous wearing this. Also, the large glass t-shirt comes in a variety of colors.
It does.
Ooh.
There's black, there's plum, there's green, there's
There's
blue.
there's a bunch of different
bunch.
ones.
Yes.
So I'm going to get this started now. The instructions are going to come up right there on the screen. So the way you enter this raffle, if you've never been here before, is first of all, you have to be a follower to get into the raffle, number one. Number two, once you follow, you're going to get 300 viewer loyalty points right off the bat for free. Not that they ever cost you anything anyway. You get 300 points. And what you're going to do is you're going to type !raffle, all one word, space, and a number of points up to what you have in viewer loyalty points. That is the only logo t-shirt I would ever wear. Wow. David, that's an honor.
Thank you.
Because, you know, I'm wow.
Yeah.
I'm speechless.
Very nice.
It is 2X.
Is it 2X?
Oh, is it 2X? Yeah, there's a whole bunch of
think
sizes.
so.
So if you win, I want you, A, you're going to have to get in touch with us so we can get your address, right? And B, you're going to have to tell us what size and color you want. So later, I'll direct you to the merchandise store. You can look at the shirt, and then I'll tell you how to get in touch with us to give us all that information should you be the winner of that. So all you got to do is type !raffle, all one word, space, and a number from 1 to, I think I put a cap at 200 on this. So 1 to 200. The more points you enter in that number, the better chance you have of winning. Good luck. We'll draw that in an hour. And now, I'm going to back off from that a little bit and just mention one last thing, because I know I don't want to go in. We got a lot to do.
Oh, we have
I don't
so
want to
much to
spend
do.
too much
Yes,
time on
we do.
support.
Yep.
However, we're on Patreon, and we've got an event coming up for our Patreon supporters on Friday, September 3rd at 8 p.m. Those Patreon supporters are going to get invited into a Zoom roundtable discussion with us and a guest, and we're actually going to broadcast that as a private broadcast. So for those Patreon members who want to be part of it, they get in on the Zoom. For the others that don't, they can sit out and watch the broadcast. And Carolyn Thau with the subscription, you're awesome. Thank you. Nice to see you, by the way.
Yep, John Park's here too.
Oh, nice. Everybody's here. This is
Everybody's coming in.
We've got. I feel like we're back to fall.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Summer's over, people. Anyway, that's going to take place for our Patreon members. Now, you can head over to patreon.com/thelargeglass, separated by underscores, and you can sign up, and you can be part of that. It's going to be fun. The topic that evening for the roundtable discussion is what makes bad art, or what makes a work of art bad, if it even is. And we're going to have a really good, lively chat about that with references. We're going to invite our members to actually bring examples of what they think is bad. So we're excited about that. And now I'm going to stop talking about those things, and hopefully we can move on.
I'm actually prepared for a little bit of drama that night.
There's going to be drama that
There's
night.
going to be drama. There's
Yeah.
some disagreements.
You and Glenn
over what's
Lavertu are already
bad
banging
and what's
heads over this.
Good, so it's going to be a good time.
I agree. I think it is going to be a good time. Okay, good. People are starting to get into the raffle. I love that. Let's get this train rolling, though. What do you say?
Yeah.
References? Oh, boy. Yeah, Glenn, you got to bring references. All right, so let's start talking about this show.
Yeah, let's.
All right, so let's pop over to that first and foremost and see what we've got. So I must keep reminding myself of this, which is a show of Hamlett Dobbins.
Correct.
At the Brownstone Art. Now, we've been advertising this in our newsletter. We've been telling you about it in previous shows. TheBrownstoneArt.com is the place to go to see this show if you have not had a chance to get over there already, and I encourage you to. However, you're going to see it right now. So we got One Good King is here. Wow.
Ooh,
That's great. We haven't seen you in a while.
Drama.
Trauma or drama? Actually,
Maybe a little bit of both.
a lot of both, I think, right? So if you haven't been over to TheBrownstoneArt.com yet, you definitely want to do that. And you're going to be sort of invited into an exhibition there that starts with this image that we see on the screen right now. So do you want to can you walk us in a little bit to tell us about Hamlet's show that we had with him before?
Sure.
I mean, we
Yeah.
had him on the show. I kind of want to
We did
acquaint people
have
that didn't
him-
see it.
Yeah, we had him on the show earlier, a couple months ago. I did write it down in the newsletter, and then I Forgot, we're up to 51 episodes, so this is our 51st episode tonight.
I believe Hamlet was 43.
He was 43. That sounds about right.
Right.
But when he came on the show, we had a fantastic time. We talked about his art. He's from Memphis, Tennessee. He does abstract paintings, and he works on, I feel, a molecular level.
Uh-huh.
I think a lot of people look at his work differently. If you go to his website, which I don't know if you have the lower third.
You know what? I don't have the lower third for
That's
his
okay.
website, but I can
I'm
get
gonna
some
pull
text
it
up there.
real quick because I have it. It's HamlettDobbins.com. In his artist statement, he starts talking about the genesis of when he became an artist, and when he was a little kid, it was you're either a Lego kid or a Star Wars kid, and he's talking about Legos and building, and that really was the initiation of how he got started into art.
And I can actually read a little bit of, I don't want to read Hamlet's entire artist statement because I think it's, it's a lot to sort of put into this.
And you can revisit the episode too, which was really cool.
Right. You learn a lot from him. I think this Hamlet's artist statement is a great place to start off. And what he starts by saying is he says, you have two kinds of boys born in 1970, Lego boys and Lincoln Log boys. I'm a Lego boy. I was 7 years old when I saw Star Wars for the first time. And when I got home, I went straight to the Lego box to build the things I had just seen on the big screen. It's not hard to imagine the scene. A boy on the shag carpet of his bedroom in rural Tennessee, hunched over a bin of Legos in a concentrated effort to connect with the story he'd seen hours before. And after building his own version of Star Wars ships, becoming part of the story himself. That's the first paragraph, and I think that really tells us a lot about where Hamlet builds from.
Right.
Now, what I love about this is we're starting off with the notion of storytelling in Hamlet's statement. But one of the beautiful things about the installation of this show at the Brownstone Art is there is also that connected notion of storytelling in the show itself and the making of the show and I'm going to use the word intention of the curator, Josh Vogelin, and the director, David Backus, in how they put this show together. And they gave us enough information to back up what I'm saying. And I just want to point out that One Good King is gifting 5 Tier 1 subs across the board. Amanda Toolin, John Park, Ben Hagenbush, Jess Park, and Boo Jazz all just got Tier 1 subs.
Oh, Hamlet's
One Good
here.
King, that's awesome.
Hamlet's in the house.
And Hamlet's in the house.
Hey. All right.
So I love this notion of bringing storytelling in from both directions.
Right.
So we're off to the races here with the first piece that Hamlet has in the show.
Correct.
And so another thing about the Brownstone Art that we should talk about if you have not been there yet is they do a really nice job. Josh Vogelin did a really, really beautiful job on the installation of this show. First and foremost, you should know this show is actually virtual. It does. The Brownstone Art has a physical brick and mortar space that they use as a gallery, but since the pandemic, they've done most of their work virtually, and they're about to open up again to begin having physical shows in that space. And this may be the last virtual one for a while, hopefully. But when you go through the images of this show, it is nearly impossible to tell that this is a virtual show. As a matter of fact, in the first 2 iterations of us working with the Brownstone, I had no idea.
I didn't either. I thought it was in person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as we sort of move through this, you go from a sort of in situ shot where you're back, you see a little bit of the architecture, the stairs, the door to kind of familiarize you with the space, but then you move forward and you get a chance to actually see the physical work. Do you have the list, or do I have the list?
I do have the list.
Can we just talk about this first one, title and size and stuff?
We certainly can. This is actually untitled. It's for MRM ERS. It's acrylic on canvas. It's 33 inches by 40 inches. This is the first piece that you see when you enter the show. To quickly describe Hamlet's process, because I think that's important
Absolutely.
here too.
Yeah.
What Hamlet does is he actually works digitally at first, and he creates mock-ups, and he uses a program to design first. And what he does is he prints them out, and then he does paintings from these designs. So it's actually taking the digital and bringing it to the handmade realm.
Right.
Normally, Todd and I don't talk about this stuff before the show because we like to be spontaneous and everything like
Right.
that. Except today's show, we did talk about it a little bit, and you had some good observations because you had said that, if I can just add that, in Hamlet's case, he starts digital, he goes into the painting realm, but then David and Josh are taking it and they're putting it back into the digital realm, and that's how it's presented to us.
Right. So what I kind of drew a line or a connection between the way Hamlet functions in the studio and the way the show actually is functioning in this virtual but brick and mortar space. So you've got Hamlet's process, which begins on a computer, where he sort of what he's doing is he's trying to bring memories and stories from something deeply personal and truly inspirational to him to light abstractly. And so what he does, he sits down at the computer and he tries to build these spaces, these abstract elements that consist of elements of his language that he's developed, visual language, which consists of things like mark making and pattern. And then he takes those printouts from the digital realm over to the analog realm and he constructs these paintings. Now think about what he just said in his artist statement, where as a boy who played with Legos, going to see something that truly inspired him on a screen, or in some senses like a vision in the mind, right? Like a memory, but on a screen, coming home to a box of Legos and trying to manifest that in a physical form. It's identical. You can kind of see the connections between his influences as a boy and his making process as an artist. Now let's walk over to the Brownstone Art for a second. And what they've done is they have taken something that is now physical, because the image of the images of a physical painting, they've turned it back to digital. They've hung it on a wall in a digital space and presented it to us as if it is supposed to be analog. And so there is this sort of convoluted vacillation or back and forth between the digital and the physical realm in such a fantastic way that I almost forget that all of that is taking place in a really nice kind of way. In other words, I'm not stumped or caught up on or tripping on the fact that I'm looking at something digitally anymore.
Correct.
Because it's gone through so many iterations. So anyway, for what it's worth, that's kind of that.
Yep. So going through the show.
Yeah.
Both David and Josh sent us statements on how they proceeded with curating the show. And it's interesting that they both looked at it from a different place. They were more in tune with how the paintings made them feel. I was really intrigued with how they used the paintings throughout the space of the gallery as well, because they used the stairs in the gallery as a crescendo point to put this explosive painting, whereas they used maybe a plateau for something that wasn't as explosive. I was noticing that as well. When you first walk into the gallery, they mention how it's practically devoid of color. You have these white walls and everything. And this is the opening painting right here. That starts with the orbs of energy and vibrant colors.
Right, and they sort of embrace this void space. This is sort of like the genesis of the show. This is sort of like the beginning. And, you know, I don't want to like give away all the things I'm thinking about with this show right off the bat, but Josh and David from the Brownstone Art gave us a sort of show commentary. It's almost as if they sat down, or together they walked through the show and they sort of volleyed back and forth their thoughts on this show. But it was like a narrative. It was like a story. I'm not going to read through the whole thing right now, but there are references to things like things being born, small universes, the birth of a star, this sort of explosive kind of, I won't say Big Bang in quotes, but it kind of is this kind of world building exercise around the birth of a universe. And the references to planets and things in this commentary. And I'm like, well, here we are again. Here is another sort of world building story taking place, like Hamlet's stories around these memories, as well as, I mean, the story of Star Wars is in his, his artist statement. You can't ignore that. Can we kind of keep going through this?
Let's go through the next.
And so the first couple of paintings that you encounter in the show really beautifully represent that kind of genesis, that kind of boom that takes place. So here we are again, backed away from a painting and situation where we can see the windows on either side. I feel like I'm really there.
Yes.
I love that. And then in we go. We move in on this one.
Correct. This is also an untitled piece that has a dedication, KSP, NJP, FM, acrylic on canvas, 60 by 80 inches. Yes.
You got to remember, too, that a painter like Hamlett has more work than I care to even reference, simply because I feel immensely inadequate as an artist when I see how much work Hamlett has. So when you take someone like David and Josh, who have to sort of go to Hamlett and say, all right, we're gonna do this show, we're gonna fine tune this down to a fraction of what you have. How do we do that effectively? How do we juxtapose things? That word's for you, Glenn. How do we juxtapose things that create an interesting dialogue, that give us a kind of, something to work with, right? In terms of how we look at this. And so, if we're talking about this sort of, this kind of explosive birth, this kind of opening of the show, this energized thing, this painting to me that's on the screen now it's chromosomal, it's energetic, it's electrified, it's got a system in it that's almost like the strands of DNA, right? And it's got this energy center, right? Which is also like really quite exciting.
Yeah, we have some comments coming in.
Yeah, we do actually. Well, there was a lot of things that were going by from the bots and stuff, and everybody's thanking each other for the
but memory vessel.
Oh, the digital physical schism.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is one we struggle with, right? And I think it's something that we'll probably continue to struggle with.
Right.
A great deal of time was spent on this for certain. Yeah, no,
yes.
Absolutely. So let's keep rolling, because then there's another example of this that Josh and David present to us where we're backed away from another energy source. Now let's just back up for a second, because in this one with its darker edge feels internal. Now we move to what almost feels external, as if we're back looking.
Well, David and Josh are also seeing interactions happen between the paintings as well. Like the first one, they're starting to see an energy build up and a chaos, and then it leads to this explosion. So they're starting to put the paintings in a chronological order in the way that they're interpreting it.
Right.
Actually, when I'm looking at some of their curatorial process, it reminds me of the Barnes and Alfred Barnes and how he would curate his museum. And he had narratives along with the way that he portrayed the paintings and the pewter vessels. Like everything had to be just so. And I go back to curatorship sometimes as an art form in itself. Because,
yeah. Oh, no, it is.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, curation is design. But many other things. It's not only design. It's not like the curators lay things out in a way that is simply visually pleasing. They have another job to do in sort of approaching the intellectual approach to the organization of the show in a way that's successful. You can't just hang things willy-nilly.
Right.
There has to be something bigger.
Right.
Right.
A larger thought process. Yes.
Right. So now, one thing you'll be treated to if you go to TheBrownstoneArt.com to look at the show is the last painting I showed you and this painting, or it's this painting and the next painting, I believe. Both have a third slide that involves an extreme close-up, which I don't have here, but I wanted to give you some kind of inspiration to go and look, and it allows you to kind of get in close. Now, what this does is it simulates you in the space and how you might be inching closer
to see the detail on the painting.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. All right, let's keep moving.
Let's keep moving. So as we go on, they're viewing these paintings as a journey. This becomes an explosive crescendo as they actually see or say in their statement. And then again, we're zooming in on that. This one is another untitled piece. It's 54 by 46 inches. And then when we keep moving along...
Of course, we need to have a moment of calm.
Yes.
right? And so all of the sort of energetic, fiery nature of the beginnings of this show land here.
And they chose this as a moment of calm for, I think, a couple of reasons as well. We've got the palette, we have none of the explosive dynamics going on with the painting. Everything's nicely separated. We've got these therapeutic colors. We actually have what Hamlett painted on as well. The other paintings were painted on canvas. This is linen, and when you think of linen, you think of something soft and refined. So I thought that was an interesting choice to put there.
I think a couple of the other ones were on linen, but I think this one has physical linen.
Well, this one's the first one in the show that we're seeing with linen.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Unless I'm wrong.
Well, Memory Vessel says, are these for sale within this gallery? And the answer to that is yes. So the first thing you're going to want to do if you're interested in that is all inquiries. You can go through to TheBrownstoneArt.com. And you can contact David through that gallery link. Yes, but for sure they are. And these are fantastic works. Mm-hmm. So do they already exist or just if purchased? No, they already exist. And I believe if they are purchased, and David's listening, so correct me if I'm wrong, but if they are purchased, they are shipped directly from the artist's studio to you. So the gallery functions obviously as a venue for the show, as well as a facilitator for all other things between you and the artist, but then the artist would ship to you. Check me on that if I'm wrong, David, but I believe I'm not. Let's get a little closer to this one. I like this as a real sort of antithesis to everything that has just gone on, mm-hmm. right? And I also like this as, if I'm not mistaken, is this just before you go upstairs?
This is just before you go upstairs.
Right.
So physically, if you were to physically explore the gallery, it's also a place where you're resting right before you start climbing and escalating again.
Right.
So the choices of painting with that feeling of action coincide with that physical experience.
Right, and one thing that I really love about this that Josh and David mentioned in this is one of the quotes from their commentary, which I kind of wanted to sort of reiterate is, and remember, this commentary was like a story being told, right? So there are references to visual things in there, and they said a color cell developing on the outer edge of planet Dobbins, right? And so it's almost like this is all that energy, all that sort of violent kind of explosiveness comes to a calming moment, and this thing is born, right? This little spot, and look at the energy in that spot. Look at the way that spot sort of rests both on top of and underneath that divided space. On the left side, it's kind of got this sort of color gradation. On the other side, it lies under a translucency, but it's sort of like both in and out of water, almost as if life is coming out of, the soup, right? Yeah. The cosmic soup, to quote Carl Sagan. I love Carl Sagan. Yeah. I had to use cosmic soup. But it's like that life force is kind of crawling onto that space. And of course, I'm literalizing a lot of this, but I like this narrative, and I like the references to science fiction in both the curation of the show, in Hamlett Dobbins' statement. I think all of these things are, really working beautifully.
Yeah,
really,
I agree.
Really quite nice.
I agree.
So should we go upstairs?
We should go upstairs.
All right.
So as we go upstairs, the tension is beginning to build again. And we see it with this painting. This is also a linen painting. So acrylic on linen, on panel, 16 by 20 inches, also entitled.
And so where we earlier had these more nebulous spaces of...
It's almost like a reorganization.
And there's a dialogue. Mm-hmm. Now we have two. And so from one, we have two. So this might be some kind of now new kind of... what's the word I'm looking for? There's potential.
Oh, that one's the big one he's telling us, 60 by 80. Why? Thank you. My information's a little incorrect
and
here.
This is why we have Hamlett here.
This is why you're here. You're to fact check us.
Fact checker Dobbins on the scene. Yeah, but now there's like this dialogue taking place. And I really like the fact that almost the two colors that we've seen in the earlier paintings are represented in each of the individual elements in this dialogue. It's almost like they've come together to explore one another for the notion of potential, and they're completely separated by that void.
That does seem to be that way, actually.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm excited about that. And I feel like in the context, Hamlet, of course, when you hear Hamlet talk about his work and you hear him talk about the stories that inspired the making of these pieces, and that's what they were inspired by. They were inspired by events, and they might be very, very subtle events, like the color of uncut grass on a particular person's lawn at a particular time of day while he was walking with a friend down the street. That moment might have been so bright inside of his like sort of inspirational engine that's what sort of brought a painting to life. What we're doing here in this review is we're sort of taking both the paintings themselves from Hamlet and the context of the hanging of this show, along with the curatorial sort of intentions, and sort of telling a new story, which I kind of like, right? So for what it's worth, intergalactic produce, like that, Ben's great. That's great. And Rippleflux is saying, wow, really dig his stuff. Yeah, I know. This is great stuff. So let's move on, because now
Let's move on.
all of a sudden there's like this organization,
It is.
right?
And they're seeing some replication of color cells, beginning of a life cycle. They're recognizing rivers and some of the abstraction.
So in the formation of, if this were now, if that life force, like remember the earlier painting, the calm, before we came upstairs, it's now got a similar material. It's got a replication of an element of Hamlet's language in it, right? This elliptical sort of target has now replicated itself across the space. We've got the bisected square into two triangles, almost like folded origami or like a linen placemat, now populated, now overcome by those forms. And there's like these other elements of the language sort of now layering and overtaking and contributing to all of the sort of organized space. It's organized and disorganized at the same time. I'm not letting you talk at all.
No.
I'm talking way
This is
too
great.
much.
Nope, you're good.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I love to hear him talk, so talk away.
No, come on, you're supposed to be. All right, anyway, so let's get back to storytelling for a second, because we've got storytelling on the curatorial side. We've got storytelling on Hamlet's side.
We have storytelling on our side.
And we have storytelling on our side. If you think about it, storytelling is a way of reproducing an event. Storytelling is how we maintain our history. It's how we pass our culture on to our children. It's how we teach. And so what we're really doing when we tell a story is we reproduce an event. Now, all of us have probably known a good storyteller and a bad storyteller. A bad storyteller is really not going to embellish, create drama, create fear, create interest. They're not going to be very visually descriptive. They're probably just going to be dry and fact-based, and it's just going to be a very simple boom, boom, boom. A good storyteller will sort of try to take all of those elements and recreate them through words. But in this case, I feel like Hamlet attempts to take those stories that were the birthplace of these paintings, and these paintings are the birthplace of this story that's taking place in the gallery. But Hamlet tries to take those inspirational stories and recreate them in a way that is as powerful or more powerful than the way that they impacted him in the first place. And he recognizes that that cannot be done with words, right? Or maybe it can, and I'm sort of selling short all those people out there that write. But he recognizes that either A, it can't be done in words, or B, it would be better done through visual imagery and the language that he himself has developed through his life to tell that story from that Lego box. The first place was the Lego box, and it's here now. And so I find those little, those little patterns, those little other elements of the language that he's built over time to be really beautiful and sort of amorphous compositional elements that build up to this other feeling, right? You're watching the chat. I know there's a lot of stuff going by.
There's so much going on right now. I see Memory Vessel making some really good comments. Remember, reconnect, yes.
Yeah, and so these things are like, I think, all connected. And I love the way Hamlet's paintings have been brought together in this show to further that connectivity. That's key. All right, let's keep moving. We got a couple more to go.
We have a couple more.
So can you just give us a size and info on this one?
Certainly. This is also untitled. My information tells me it's acrylic on canvas, 50 by 60 inches.
Hamlet's quickly fact checking.
Yes. Yes.
You know, this one has, and Josh and David both mentioned this in their commentary, but it has a figurative kind of form to it.
Yes, and they do mention an association with that as well. They see it as this creature that's emerging. They're giving that journey of a cell, and this is what they're seeing now.
Right.
And it appears to be, because of the colors and because of the way that it's presented, it appears to have a friendly connotation.
Right. It's almost as if that form grew up and turned into this, right?
Yes.
The next sort of stage of all of that life that's pouring forth. I love this painting because I feel like it sort of now takes, you know, in Hamlet's language, if we just go back for a second and look at this one, you know, when we're dealing with things like pattern and the overlapping of pattern, and then this other abstract form that we're calling a river just because we're really talking about world building and things like that, but, you know, for lack of a better word, we call it that. And then there's this other geometric thing happening in the lower right-hand corner. A lot of those things in their presentation have a kind of pleasingness about them that I automatically can gravitate towards, right? But then when we start to sort of take the singular form, right, by itself in the middle of the canvas, rising up, compositionally this is hard, right? I find it to be a very difficult thing to pull off, but somehow the way in which this thing sinks into its space, how that magenta space and that explosion in the background really wants to come at me, but he's kind of holding it back, not in a literal kind of way, but in a more pictorial kind of way. And then on top of it, there's this sort of strange place between letter form and chromosome.
Well, it's interesting because Josh and David are trying to, they seem to have identified this into a figurative form, but when you look at it, it's like fingerprints, which is identification to me. Like when you look at the pattern, and that's what I'm seeing.
And One Good King says something really interesting. The target iconography has replicated and is now looking back at us.
Yes.
Because it now, okay, so can I add one thing to that? Because I love that comment. It's almost like it has a consciousness, and it's actually now able to address the viewer. Right. And so now there is a confrontational sort of element to it, right? Not necessarily in an aggressive way, but it's now we can address one another.
Yeah.
I really, really.
That's a good one.
That's a great comment.
Mom says, love this one.
Yeah, I know, Mom. I know my mother.
Yes.
I know what my mother likes. All right. So we get to this one. And we're winding down. We
are winding down.
This is the end of the show.
This is.
Not the end of our show, but the end of the Brownstone.
Yeah.
This is the last painting in the gallery.
This one is also untitled. It's acrylic on canvas, 60 by 72 inches. The way that Josh and David have interpreted it in relation to this overall story that they're unfolding within the gallery, they're seeing it as a second explosion happening. And all this energy is coming out, and it's pushing the painting into existence. So it's kind of like the Big Bang grand finale.
Well, we've circled back to where we came from as well. There's a void in the center of this, right? It's like another. Now we're back.
Returning back.
We've come full circle.
Yes.
But what I like about this one as the last painting rather than the first one is there's a greater sense of harmony in the organization of this one. The way in which the patterns are arranged, the way in which things are contained. It's almost as if in the second cycle, it has sort of learned something through the places that it's been. And of course, this story that we're telling is really about the curation.
The curation.
And if you want to know the story of the paintings themselves, you can go back to the episode where we had Hamlett on, which was actually one of the more enjoyable moments I've ever had on this show, is having Hamlett on, because talking about his work.
And he's so funny.
That too.
It was a really good show.
That too, Hamlett. I don't know if you know this, but I used a clip from that show in our channel trailer because it just was too much to pass up.
Yes.
But just to get back to this for a second, I'm so glad, and I have to say, when you're out there looking at a show, right, if this sort of large interpretation about the way a show is hung or the way something is presented to you doesn't come to you, just walk out. It's a terrible show. No, I'm just kidding. If it doesn't come to you, that's okay. It's what it's really about is what you need to remember, I should say. What you need to remember is that there's intention behind the hanging of a good show. There is a collaboration between a curator and an artist when putting something together. There's thought that goes into that. The gallery is not this inert place all the time. Sometimes, I mean, I've been in galleries where it does not feel like this has been done to this degree. I believe a good gallery, a good curator, takes the time and effort and care to consider those relationships, consider if there is a linear storyline or not, right? And why not, or why. So I think Josh and David have done an exceptional job of putting this show together.
I do, and the attention to detail that was involved, because when I think of Hamlet, and I've said this repeatedly, he uses a chronology as his fundamental background to when he starts his works. And if you go to his website, you can actually see his chronology originating long before he was born, with paintings done in Italy 300 years before his birth, and just the origination of thought and ideas. And we see how he's born. His father's born, his mother's born. And then you see these events and artists come into play. And then he starts building Legos, and then he starts painting. And then the process builds more and more until he's got this format. Josh and David come along, and they're adding to it. And it's almost like some collateral circulation going on, where they're kind of stemming off this chronology that's already in place to build another story.
Agreed. But you know what? Scultori makes a really good comment here, and I really feel like we need to address this as sort of the counterpoint, right? I've found out the hard way, the show and work are not the same thing always, right? So just as we could try to find a way in which the show and the work kind of generate a new sort of life for the work, it could easily be undone and taken to a level that you don't want it to, where the curator sees a vision in the work that doesn't necessarily jibe with the whole, artist's vision at all, and that's really problematic. And Jim and Scultori, I slipped. Scultori, I'm sorry that is the case here, because that's not the way we want it to go. But then at the same time, you don't turn it away, or do you? Anyway, we're going to move on to Pam Glick at this point. But I got to say, this show, I must keep reminding myself of this. Hamlett Dobbins at TheBrownstoneArt. You should go see it. I mean, you're going to see exactly what we saw, but think of your own considerations here. Think of your own ideas. Come back and put them in the chat next week. I'd love to keep talking about this. I think it's important. The show is up for another, I believe it's 2 weeks, is it?
I believe so. Let me get the show.
I'm sorry that I don't
current
have that number right in front of me, but I believe
I don't know if the end time was up.
Well, we discussed it, and I don't have my notes in front of me.
Okay. Yeah, it's not up here.
David Backus says, you guys did such a great job in this review. It was hard not to put on a good show with the work that Hamlett provided us. Yeah, for sure. We thank you all. Thank you. We really love this. Hamlett says, thanks, y'all. It was I got to put on my glasses.
That was super fun. I got to eavesdrop on other people talking about the work at the opening without being creepy.
Yeah, it's not like you're just standing off to the side and listening in. Cool. Well, thank you. And I think this is great. I loved having the opportunity to do this, and I hope we can do more of those.
And David did put his contact information, so if anyone's interested in adding one of Hamlet's pieces to their art collection,
which I think would be a fantastic idea. It is TheBrownstoneArt129@gmail.com. If you want to discuss that further with David, pick up one of these paintings. Oh my gosh, I would.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Thanks to both of you.
Yes.
Okay, so let's see. What do we have next? We've got to figure out the next thing on the list. We got to do birthdays.
We have to do birthdays. We're out of sequence.
Oh my
tonight.
God! All right, we got to fly.
We do.
We got to fly. All right,
I'm
so
gonna
let's.
borrow some of your resin.
You're gonna drink the resin.
I am, because the Bengali is all gone.
63. If you're still here, could you put something in the comments about
I'm just gonna have like an inch or two.
where this might be going? Okay, so birthdays.
Birthdays.
Let's.
I have to say, 67 did send me a list of birthdays.
Glenn, he doesn't want to be called 67.
Okay, so, and I have to say, I didn't put it in my database right away, so I missed a couple of them. I got some of them, but next week they're all going to be squared away. So.
All right, let's go. What do we got?
Oh, Larry Rivers.
Yeah.
It's his birthday today.
Yes.
He is amazing. 1923 he was born. He's a Renaissance man. He plays the saxophone.
She plays the saxophone.
I play the saxophone, so it was love at first sight. He also is a filmmaker. He's an actor. He is a painter known for pop art. He did some excellent compositions. I love his work. Happy birthday, Larry. He died a couple years ago, but he's really phenomenal.
Yeah.
So it's his birthday.
Got to keep going. Got
Gotta
stuff to
keep
do.
going. We have George Bellows, who died surprisingly young, but I'm not going to talk about that because it's his birthday and that's kind of depressing. So, but it's his birthday coming up on the 19th, 1925.
Whoa. Memory Vessel plays a saxophone too.
Get out.
Oh boy.
Well played. Alto, tenor, what do you play? I play alto, so maybe we can do a little band. And on Christmas time, we do duets.
Oh,
He
wait a
gets
minute.
out the
And I know
clarinet, and
Rippleflux plays the saxophone as well.
Oh man, we
Yeah.
can have a trio.
Yep. He plays tenor and
Woo.
this could be good.
This
All right.
could be very
the
good.
sax show.
Yes, the sax show. We could busk in the subway, which I did, by the way, because I had to. It was a bucket list thing. So, but anyway, I digress. So George Bellows, 1925, the 19th of August, Ashcan School.
Fantastic painter.
Yep, fantastic painter. American Impressionism, did urban scenes, New York City.
Scultori says Bellows could paint snow like few others. I should have put one of those
we
up
don't
there.
have
I
one of
grabbed one of the
those.
very sort of common boxing.
Yeah, he did die young at 42 because his appendix ruptured. So back then, healthcare wasn't what it was today. But anyway, happy birthday.
Happy birthday. Let's see. We are moving on.
We are
Who is
moving
this fine
on.
dashing man with this
This
very severe
is
middle part?
Aubrey Beardsley. His
Yes.
birthday is August 21st, 1872. He's known mostly for the woodcut ink drawings, such as this.
Yeah, I love his painting.
Yeah,
I love
he's
his
fantastic. Art Deco,
his
Art
prints.
Nouveau. So happy birthday.
And two more to go. Two more to go.
This is Henri Cartier-Bresson, who is a photographer. He was born on August 22nd, 1908. He did a lot of street photography back in the day. He was kind of a pioneer of old black and white photography. He used his 35 millimeter. So happy birthday.
Okay, hold on. I've got one more to go. Oh, sorry.
that's
I totally missed
beautiful.
this photo. That is an absolutely
It's a
stunning,
Yes.
stunning photo.
Yes.
And one to go.
And one to go, which
Got him
is
in there.
today. So Ridley Howard, one of my favorite painters. It's his birthday today, actually. I found out through Instagram because Holly Coolis posted it. He is a contemporary painter. Does a lot of figures, abstraction, landscape abstraction. But happy birthday, Ridley. We love you.
I got one more in there. And John Park is going HCB for Bresson because he's appreciating the fact that we've got a good photographer
he likes
in there.
photography.
Yes, we did that one for you.
Yes.
So, okay.
Okay.
That is all the birthdays.
That
and
is all the birthdays.
it's the first time we've ever finished birthdays at
We
10
flew
minutes
through
to
them.
9.
And there's a couple I forgot this week. So I could do honorable mentions, but some of them I can't pronounce. So I'll put them up on our social media.
It's a lot, and
Yeah.
we still have a lot to cover.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
okay. All right, so let's start talking about Pam Glick, because I think that's supposed to be, our second half of the show tonight.
Yes.
And I think she is a perfect artist to have on after talking about
She's
Hamlet's
a
work.
fantastic compliment. And we actually planned on doing a different artist, as we usually do. Our calendar has a lot of cross-outs here and there because once we start thinking about the show, we start thinking of pairings that are more suitable. And as we were thinking of Hamlet, Pam Glick recently had a show that just closed last week, and we felt that that was more in tune with the tone for tonight. So
yeah, agreed. But I think that this is actually the perfect complement. So let's get down to some business here. Now,
this was the painting that made me fall in love with Pam Glick.
Yeah, I think this is the exact same painting I saw when you and I started to talk about possibly doing this. I think we were looking at the same screen at the same time.
Yes, I think you're right.
And I think it's important. I love having Hamlet's work at the beginning of this show and having all of you having just saw it, because I think it's really important to talk about where the two are similar and where the two are different. And the reason I want to have, this is not going to all be about that, but I think the reason it's important to mention that is I think for people, I think for some people, Hamlet's work, they approach Hamlet's work different than they might approach Pam's work. Mm-hmm. And I have to say, I really, I want to find all the common ground there to mm-hmm. sort of talk to our viewers about why I think Pam's work has this, there's another facet to the beauty in Pam's work that is not necessarily as evident as it might be at first glance in Hamlet's paintings, mm-hmm. right? And so with Pam's work, I like to take my time, and I like to, there are things to sort of flesh out of these spaces and these layers and the etherealness to some of those grounds and the way things sort of shift that I'm really excited by. Mm-hmm. And I want to be the teacher right now that I've always mm-hmm. been, and kind of be like, okay, here's how I want you to look at this, because that's how I used to talk to my students. So anyway, go ahead. I'm taking over.
So she's a contemporary painter, and I like to usually give a background on the artist that we're talking about. Right now, so she is a RISD alum. She has a BFA in painting. There's not a whole lot of information on her in terms of biography and stuff like that. There's some videos here and there. There's a video through one of the galleries that she went through. There's some really cool YouTube videos in which she does demos with doodling.
But given the fact that it's not necessarily easy to find a lot on her, don't make the mistake of thinking that she is not a very well-established, seasoned artist who has had
extremely
quite a career.
Yes.
So, and that's, I think, really important to point out, because
I did find some stuff about her, because I don't give up until I find out a little bit. I did find an old blog that has since stopped. She stopped her blog a while ago. This one woman named Caroline Juskus from On Palm Happy, but she did an interview with Pam Glick some years ago, and she actually talked to her about her process, about her inspiration, about all these different things. And some of the earliest memories, which always appeals to me, I like to find out how artists started. And one of the earliest memories that she has is that her mom bought the whole family easels, her siblings, her dad, everybody like that. They set them up downstairs in the basement. Pam would start painting as a young girl, and she noticed many hours later that she was the only one left painting. So she fell in love with art fairly early. When she went to high school, she was very involved in ceramics and in the art scene. And then later on, she went to Amherst College. I believe that's where she started. And she spent a lot of time closing down some of the studios there. And eventually one of the instructors saw her and said, you need to go to RISD or someplace like that.
You need to apply to school because you're basically already doing it, I think was the quote.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how she started.
And, you know, I love the way you kind of bring in the life of the artist in the beginning.
You need to know that.
Well, you need to kind of have a context. Yeah. But I kind of want to jump into process because this is one of the things that excited me most about her. And, you know, when we look at these works and when we hear Pam talk about how she works, the thing that excites me about this is she talks about this notion of the thing I always talk about: making is thinking, drawing is a form of thinking, and she does this thing where she actually tells you, call a friend who talks on the phone for a long period of time, because you know how you get into making those doodles on the phone. You've got a pad of paper there, and someone's talking away in your ear, telling you a story, and you're listening. But there's a secondary process that I find helps my brain tune into the story that's being told to me, that involves this motion, activation of the hand, right? Which we've already seen. I've talked about this in earlier shows, and I'm not going to rehash this over and over again, but how the activation of the hand in a creative process activates memory centers and creative centers in the brain. So there's proof that that kind of drawing is good for idea generation, right? So then what does she do? She brings those to the studio, and she brings them to scale. And scale is an important word, but I feel like I ran over you there for a second. So, but you know, so in a lot of ways, these are. Do we have sizes on any of these right now?
We do actually. If we go back to the other one, the other thing I want to point out, which isn't really mentioned in anything that you find on her, she's from New York State, so she lives in Buffalo, New York right now. One thing I'm going to argue is that she's a bit of a regionalist, even though she works in the abstract. She is close to Niagara Falls.
Right.
Many of her paintings are centered around Niagara Falls and the linearity of it, the lines, the overall feelings of it. This particular painting is called Niagara, USA, Canada. It was painted in 2018. It's acrylic and enamel on canvas. It's 30 by 30 inches.
Sculptori says, I call that useful distraction. And I actually really like that reference, because, you know, when a writer is stuck for ideas, and I'm not a writer, but I do know that the notion of stream of consciousness writing can really help to break a writer out of a space that they might, sort of be stuck in. And we accept that. In this case, it almost feels like this is stream of consciousness in the way in which she draws, that becomes the material that she'll bring to the studio and utilize in the painting. Now, what I also appreciate about this, though, is if I were to do that, and I do that, like I do go through a number of drawing exercises, my final product will often change drastically from what I did in that thinking space, right? I like, and I'm sure, and I'm absolutely certain that Pam's does also to a degree, but I also like the fact that in some of these, it almost feels like those line drawings are scaled up to this big size. And the line weight maintains its sort of scale and relationship to everything else that's going on in it. And so what happens is the doodle not only becomes bigger, and bigger isn't always necessarily better, but what happens is there's a meaning or a purpose imbued into the work through this transformation, this scale transformation, which now I'm going to look at this totally differently, right? And it's interesting to think about all of the different elements that go into that, and I'm going to mention a couple of them, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. So, and we got a lot of these to kind of go down
through.
You
were asking about this one. This one's also part of the same series, Niagara, USA, Canada, 2018, 2019, acrylic on canvas, 48 by 48 inches.
By the way, Memory Vessel was given a shout out to Massachusetts, growing up near Amherst, and she also mentions that she likes the texture in this repetition. And it's a different kind of repetition and texture. I'm going to go back to Hamlet for a minute, because there is a I'm going to try and find the right word here. Actually, Glenn used this word in reference to a drawing I made a couple of weeks ago, and I like it in this, but it's not quite the same, but it's like a greasiness or almost a dirtiness. And it has to do with like a scumbled edge. It has to do with a kind of when you
It's
paint,
almost like a dry brush effect with some of those lines too. You know how it gets that scumbly effect if it's a little bit dry in the application.
right, and that's also a result of the immediacy. Like with drawing, there's an immediacy to what's happening. With painting, that immediacy isn't always necessarily at the ready.
Right.
And so you might have to move faster than the material wants to move. And so if it's going to be about the immediacy, then you're probably going to leave some space there or leave a scumbled mark there to one degree or another. One Good King says there's an affectedness to the primitivism that feels unearned. Maybe not fair, but came to mind. It feels unearned. Well, so it's a good thing that's coming out of maybe the mark making, I guess. That's a really interesting point, and I kind of want to talk about that. Memory Vessel says, I'd relate to the linear one with the chroma
Play in Hamlet's.
play in
I think
Hamlet's.
the previous one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, why don't we?
absolutely.
Well, let's put a couple
Let's
more
keep
in the mix
going.
here, so we can kind of get a sense of the range of mark making that's present here. So what's the name of this one?
So this one is from an earlier show, White Columns in 2016. The previous two were in her most recent show. But this one is called Red, White, and Blue Dowser 2016, oil and enamel on canvas 72 by 72 inches.
Yeah, and now we're sort of starting to see this other mark that's coming into play here with the spray can, right? And so now and what the spray can does is it's got a diffusion to it. It's got a kind of sense of it kind of holds the light in a different way. It beautifully contrasts some of the different geometries that have these marks in them, and so it creates this kind of sense of space, right? And because of all these references to Niagara Falls, I feel like there's got to be some kind of play in there. I feel like she's picking up that material with an intention or a reason. Did she mention any of that when she was talking about it?
There is a video produced by White Columns, and it's about 15 minutes long, and she does talk about some of that. In the video, I believe that they actually start talking about Jasper Johns a little bit with this one, and that was something that we were noticing that you'll eventually see. There's a deep history to her paintings. They don't just rely on the moment in the doodle.
Right.
She has other artists referenced in them.
Oh, for sure.
Right. But we don't have that video here.
Well, and that's an awfully long video for
but
tonight.
it's definitely worth seeing. It's on their gallery page and Vimeo.
Yeah, if you Google White Columns, Pam Glick, I think you'll find that pretty easily. I just want to remind everybody that we are having a t-shirt giveaway for a large glass t-shirt. There's only 3 minutes left that raffle. And if you want to get in on that, you want to type in the chat bar, !raffle, all one word, space, and a number between 1 and 200. The higher the number, the more of a chance you have to win, but it does use up your viewer loyalty points that you have. That's that little purple circle down below the chat bar. You can probably see how much you have. So make sure to get in on that so you have a shot at getting that t-shirt. You have to be a follower to win it. John Park says 2016 colors here. Not a coincidence. Aha. John with the good observation.
Political.
Yeah, it does come up. She's asked that question a couple of times in different interviews I've seen about the references to the flag. She doesn't deny that Jasper Johns was sort of present in her thinking, but she doesn't necessarily directly tie it.
No, she doesn't.
Which I think is wise, right? You want to make it. You want to put that in there. Well, come around the back door. We'll talk about Jasper Johns for a little bit, which I like.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep moving here.
Let's keep moving.
So, and Hamlet earlier said these are awesome, and I could totally see Hamlet just being in love with these. So
I'm just moving along to this. So this one is an untitled piece. This was in her most recent exhibit, and her most recent exhibit was at the Tennis Elbow at the Journal Gallery in New York. Untitled 2021 acrylic enamel and graphite on canvas 48 by 48 inches.
Yeah, I mean, these are good size. And, you know, if we're going to be talking about referencing other artists, in this one, I can't help but think about referencing Barnett Newman and those sort of zip paintings, the way those lines sort of go right down the middle of a painting and defy that, you know, trying to sort of create no space, right? Or he was obsessed with flatness. And in this one, there's a real sort of negation of that doodle space by putting these on top of it, right? But it's playful. It's tongue in cheek. It's like, you know, there's just, it doesn't feel to me to have the weight and seriousness of, you know, it's like it kind of looks at Barnett Newman, but then it's just like, haha, I'm gonna take Barnett Newman's whole thing and just be like, I'm gonna play with it and have fun with it. And then, you know, that's where it lands. So
there seems to be a series of these two. The next one is
there's a bunch of these that kind of have a
super cool because I don't know if it's intentional or not. This is also Untitled 2021 enamel, acrylic, and graphite on canvas 24 by 24 inches. Then you see that emulation of metal almost right through bisecting her composition. Which I love. I think it's so well done. There's a reflective element. That's what it feels like when you're looking at it.
Yeah, and then you take that and you answer the Barnett Newman thing, and it even seems to enforce that a little bit more, where it's sort of like, yeah, well, now I'm going to create this entire illusion of depth and space on top of this otherwise flat thing, you know, just to kind of drive the point home. And I'm probably way off base on this reference, but I kind of like thinking about how Pam Glick has a great sense of humor.
Oh, she does.
And because I've seen that sense of humor in the work, I'm not just discovering that now. It's obvious she's got a great sense of humor. Seeing this and thinking about Barnett Newman makes me laugh a little bit in a great sort of way. It's like, oh God, you take yourself so seriously. Look what I can do with a similar sense of flatness and a similar sense of illusion, and I can make this thing sing.
It's almost expertly rendered to that metal.
Yeah, and the two pieces together are just such a beautiful kind of harmony. You can no longer enter the raffle, Streamlabs says. Okay, well, you can't enter the raffle anymore. All right, so let's look at one more painting, and then we'll pull that T-shirt.
Oh, we got this one.
So there's a theme going on here, right? We're seeing this a couple of times, and it's like, okay, well, I do not want to keep going to other artists because I don't think that does this work justice. So what does Pam Glick do that is truly her? And then maybe I'll bring in the reference to another artist later. And what I love about these works is that I've seen her talk about them. I've read things that have been written about them, and that she's probably written about them. I think they were written by her. And I feel like there is and I deeply envy this, but there is a confidence in the making of these that says to me that she talks about how she wants to make the best painting that she can make. And I love what her definition of the best painting she can make is, because that painting doesn't look like any other painting. And that's not to say that the person who makes the most unique thing wins. What that means is she's not feeling the pressure to make a painting that looks like someone else's painting or looks like something else that is happening now, right? And so I've got two references here that I want to bring up of other artists that I feel like are relevant. Number one is one of the most obvious ones to me, and that is, oh God, why is that zoomed so far out? Is Philip Guston, right? I think Philip Guston was that person in his time. He didn't give a damn about what was going on with abstract expressionism. He was so far ahead of his time. And then, you know, his drawings had this kind of whimsical, quirky, loose, representational, not representational kind of free form to them. Not all of them, but that's why I picked this one. That I feel like, you know, I feel like she's like a Guston, and you can't, I have so much love and respect for Guston.
Yeah.
So there's that, right? And then, wait a minute, that's not it. that's not it. This is it. So we were on this one, and then I see that light grid that attempts to sort of tile these pieces. I gotta stop talking about it. Jess Park says, reminded of some Keith Haring here, like deconstructed.
And that's the most interesting part of Pam's work to me, is that we can find similarities in this great tradition of art history in her work. Like, this is somebody who really knows what she's doing, because we can recognize certain elements of other artists, but she is completely original. Like, she's not copying anybody, she's not doing anything, but yet we see this overall history in her work.
Well, and I love the idea that, look, we're all sort of dealing with the weight of the canon of art history.
Yeah.
I mean, unless we're sort of outsider artists, which I want to talk about in a future show. But we're all dealing with the canon of art history as a weight on our shoulders, right? And I'm sure that Pam Glick is sort of like shrugging that weight in a great way, right? She's utilizing it. She can also make fun of it, but then at the same time, there's this kind of, it's a reference, but the work is still truly hers. And the reference really, I don't want to dwell on the reference because I don't want to create an injustice here.
Correct.
Right?
I gotcha.
But the other one I was thinking of, because I know that Jess Parks said something to reference Haring, I was thinking Carl Andre, and then the weird verticality to those lines, and without going into too much detail about Carl Andre's wife and what happened to her. Look it up. Carl Andre. Look it up. You didn't hear it from me. In a future episode, we're going to do When Art Kills.
Yes. Because that's like
Yikes.
fantastic fodder. Okay.
All right, hold on.
Yes.
What's going on here? Let's see what we got. We've got,
Your mom loves the colors.
there's also a narrative in her pattern making. Depends on which way you read it.
Yes.
Yeah, no,
there
for sure.
is.
For sure. And I love that there is probably, to some degree, rules that she sets out when she's drawing, when she's doodling on that phone call, right? But then there's not. There's probably a looseness, and she probably vacillates between restraint and an openness.
The great thing is you can actually see her process, because, like I said, she has these YouTube videos. It's called Doodle Demo. There's only 5 episodes. I watched one of them, and then I tried it with a friend. I was talking on the phone. I'm like, I'm gonna try this technique that Pam Glick is promoting, but it's kind of cool to watch an artist in process, so you can kind of see how that comes out.
I always had a pad. There was always a pad laying around when I was on the phone. And when I was on the phone as a kid, you were corded, you were tethered, you had, you couldn't go anywhere.
Oh yeah.
So you were tied to a pad, and drawing became the thing. I just wanted to throw out there, Boo Jazz, you didn't get into the raffle, so I extended it for a minute. So go ahead and type that in again so you can get in on the raffle before we do the drawing. All right, let's just go a couple more. I still, and I don't want to dwell too much on the pattern pieces, and it is getting late, but I just want to show the progression here.
Yes.
Right? So I'm going to just move through a couple of these, and you can kind of see the way the relationships between those lines that are up on the surface and the ones that sort of function as a pattern in the background grow and evolve. And there's not necessarily an order to these.
Yep.
Right?
Now, these are all fairly similar compositions too in terms of dimensions. They're all 30 by 30 inches, acrylic enamel, flash, wax pencil, graphite on canvas. Most of them are untitled. So yes.
Boo Jazz, it's exclamation point raffle, and then space the number. Scultore says the scale change in the mark making creates space that color accentuates. That's perfect. That's perfect. Because you got this really intense complementary color relationship going on between the blue and orange stripes that are coming down, that's really coming forward, and then you've got this other sort of subtle linear textural thing that really recedes.
Well, there's also some negative space cutting through the composition as well, as though she had taken an object to kind of make some marks as well, in addition to the graphite. Like, you see this very fine swirling navigating your eye through the painting as well.
Right. And there's this I love that graphite is included in this, because I love the way graphite breaks apart in various media, especially things like solvents and whatnot, because it does kind of have this, there's a certain weight to the way in which it spreads. And I think that contributes to this kind of edge that's taking place in these. And speaking of edge, wait, Memory Vessel says, did she say what the line linear versus stripes versus the texture means to her?
I don't recall. I didn't see that specifically in the video. You can go and check it out. This is from her newer exhibit, which there wasn't much said on this particular one.
But wait, I kind of want to jump on that for a second, because I think this has a lot of meaning for her.
Okay.
Right? I think that what she does, right? And we're going to get to some really interesting ones that involve text in a few minutes, but what she does in these, I believe, is she is in a thought loop.
Yes.
As she's making these.
Well, yes. She says that about paintings in particular in terms of Niagara Falls. That was a good illustration of what she was talking. She goes into a trance when she creates these paintings, because it becomes more of what she's doing, the act of painting and how things are relating to each other, than about what she is painting after a while as well. But the trance and the meditation were equally important, if not more important, than the overall composition. Right.
No, I totally agree with that. I just want to, One Good King says, I think the obstructive forms direct attention to the patterning. Yeah, that's actually a really interesting point, because all of a sudden now it's like complementary colors, how one accentuates the other. These forms are helping to accentuate what is maybe non-form, and then says, like,
I thought of it that way, but that's true.
But then he says, like, Basquiat uses the Xing out of images or words, and it's funny you mentioned that.
It is funny that you mentioned Basquiat, because we noticed some similarities. Now,
we should have shown a different painting first.
I was going to say, we should have probably shown one of her paintings first before we jumped into this one.
Why don't we make the connection?
This is a hard connection.
Let's make the connection, because we're going to stray off of what you've been seeing so far.
I will say, in her bio, she has been in group exhibits with Basquiat back in the 80s. But one of her motifs were these word paintings, in which she would repeatedly write a phrase or a word over and over again, and it was more of the line making and the drawing of it. And in this particular one, and she does a couple with I Love You, Mom, and I believe an interviewer was actually asking her, like, oh, that's sweet, and what were you thinking when you were
But she wasn't thinking about her mom.
She wasn't really thinking about her mom. Like, maybe initially she was, but it was more about what she was doing and the act of writing it, the meditative quality of going to it, and just being driven to make these marks. And yes, they have connotative meaning when you look at them. I mean, we can all like, wow, I love you, Mom. But that wasn't what it was about her. And you see this repetition of words. We have a couple of paintings that she did. This was another painting, I am safe, and she just, reading what she had said about that, she had written it down, and she said the meaning transported her a little bit, and then she liked the way it looked. And there have been a couple paintings she did with this particular phrase.
And on top of that, she did this because this was her safe place in making paintings. And she also noticed that there were a couple of people at a show that this painting was in that cried in front of this painting, because and she was taken aback by the power that painting actually had. And I think she started to see the painting in a new light after that. The reason we brought up Basquiat, and I'm really glad that One Good King brought up Basquiat, is because there's this kind of really interesting, and you said this repetition, this mantra, this kind of meditation on a phrase, right? And it's almost as if we think about the doodles and the drawing in the pad, and this idea that imagine writing that over and over and over again. It's sort of like it's got a desperation associated with it. It's got a kind of it's got a power that the other paintings have and don't have. And I like that. This is on a very different level. This is a total shift. And actually, it was Memory Vessel that was like divergence, and One Good King is like, whoa, as I started putting these up. But if you look at this sort of meditation on I am safe, and then we quickly jump back to Basquiat's Lahara, it is like, there's some similarities
he did
here.
The same thing, right? And we did feature this painting on our time capsule episode because this was painted in 1981, and it was one of his more prominent paintings of that year. And if you recall, this was slang in Puerto Rican for police officers, and there was a lot going on in the year of 1981, Rodney King. And he had used the words over and over again. And that was one of the similarities that I saw in Pam Glick's work with Basquiat.
Right. And we are really, really coming down to the late hour here.
Yes.
And, I want to mention a couple of more things, and I was hoping to pull up, where is it? It's this one here. So it's actually two. It's this one, and I want to just pull up any other one that's stretched on canvas. So as you can see in this one, there's grommets in the edge of the canvas. You can see the stitch work in the edge. This looks like a painter's drop cloth or an otherwise kind of utilitarian canvas rather than a painter's canvas that this was done on. And there is this sort of drawn quality to the way the paint is applied. It's got that kind of scumbled thing. The same thing we've been talking about. I love the way this kind of bubbles up from a kind of lower surface. I like the way, the marks in this kind of in a weird way remind me of a very sort of strange Pollock in an interesting kind of way, especially since the canvas is probably on the floor. However, I think about the drawing, and some of you have already heard me talk about this, and this may or may not be interesting, but this is where I'm going to go with this. Memory Vessel says she likes this one a lot. Here's where I'm going to go with this. The act of drawing and the immediacy of drawing, and this thing I talk about a lot, and where she talks about it from the standpoint of being this kind of like thinking space. There is a flatness to the paper, there's a quickness to the pencil, and a connection to the brain that lies outside of the realm of art objecthood, right? It's a completely different thing. To me, a drawing is so close to a thought, they're almost inseparable. A painting, however, because it's got an edge, because it's typically stretched on a canvas, because it has a prepared surface, it is an object. Even though its job is to make you forget that it's an object, right? It's an object. And so what happens? Well, some painters treat that edge. They decide they need to do something with that edge or recognize that edge, right? And other painters ignore it. And in Pam's case, she ignores it. And I think that's wise because while the painting still sticks out off the wall, casts a shadow on the wall, we were talking about this with Christian's work last week, the objectness of it and the direction that points in terms of painting is what I think imbues the doodle with meaning and power, because now all of a sudden it lives in the new contextual world of the painting, which automatically applies a certain kind of authority to it, right? That distances it from the thought that the drawing was very close to. And so I love this one. I'm pointing this way, and it's actually for you guys right here. I love this one because it sort of recalls the flatness of the drawing, right? And it's got the kind of like, it's like a piece of paper thrown on the floor after you had the thought. It's sort of like you're working through a series of thoughts and you're tossing the papers around as you move through each one. And this one kind of feels like that. Yeah. And so there's a lack of, that lack of painting objectness gives it that feeling of the drawing. And God, I need to stop talking.
No, well, I've heard her talk of this particular painting, and forgive me, I don't have the name of it at all, but this goes back to her Niagara Falls compositions, and this actually is around where the water hits when it's falling from the falls, and she was trying to capture that feeling and the appearance and the bubbles and the spray of the water. And I would say that this is like one of her most sensual paintings because you can feel that when you're in front of it.
Yes, but I love that.
Yes.
But I want to point out John Park's comment here. He's like, the pentagram has a loaded meaning. This is different than the abstract finger painting quality of the other graphic clusters. And all of a sudden now it kind of goes to the dark side a little bit.
It does.
Right? But there is a softness to this.
There is a softness.
And maybe that softness against the pentagram is kind of a...
And that's meaning in the writing too. Like when you look back on her writing compositions, and we tie all these meanings into I love mom and it's my safe spot. But when you start separating from the meaning and you're looking at it in terms of linearity and typography as the visual image, it becomes a little bit different. If you can dissociate yourself. Now, I know she's making a conscious choice of words here, but I don't know. I almost feel the same thing. Like someone's seeing pentagram, I'm like, wow, I see stars. But even aside from that, like you can look at that as facets on a bubble. Do you know what I mean? If you start dissociating from the actual meaning, and I don't know if that's fair to even say, because she chose certain words and it's very deliberate. But looking at it in a drawing sense.
Damn it. And this is why the loudest person in the room is the least intelligent. That was perfect. That was separated from the meaning. I actually really like that.
I like that too, but again, like I don't know if that's what she does.
No,
she chose very powerful phrases.
But because makes
I can't see the pentagram, but I'm like, I can also see a star, and I can also see facets on a jewel, and I can also see other things, and maybe this was just, I could see something alluding to childhood, and remember learning how to draw a star and not doing like all the little points, but the fastest way to A to B, So there's all these different
And if we go back to the tongue-in-cheek elements that sort of reference some other artists in kind of a humorous way, this could be the trap, right? The meaning trap could be there. It could be set for us. We fall into it. Here we are discussing it in that way. And in a lot of respects, she's drawing to sort of work ideas. And then, here we are sort of referencing those things in a very literal way.
Yes.
And I like that as a meaning trap.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff going on in the comments. Let's see, Memory Vessel, like a piece of paper thrown on the floor after you had the thought. A great title for a future painting. Thank you. I'm going to take that. Or you can have it if you want. One Good King, the graffiti element creates a depth of space-time.
It does.
Yeah, that thing about the spray painting actually, I think, kind of helps propel that, the base of a waterfall. There's a lot of that going on. And actually, One Good King, I could pull up another one that's got that directly embedded in it. Should we do the raffle real quick?
Yeah, let's do the raffle.
All right, we can do the raffle.
Who's the lucky winner?
Who's the lucky winner tonight? Earlier I saw Mom say that she wasn't going to go in it, and then she went in it.
I saw her go in it.
How many people do we have? Everybody went in full throttle, with the exception of Pumpkin Audrey. I like this number. I get to see everything. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 people in here.
Okay, those are good odds.
I'm going to close the entries now. And here we go. We're going to pick a winner.
Pick a winner.
Boo Jazz! Boo Jazz won a t-shirt. All right. So Boo Jazz, what I want you to do, and Boo Jazz, you know how to get in touch with me through either direct message on Facebook or Instagram. I'm going to send you a link. Actually, get me your address, and I will send you a link to the merch store. Actually, let's just pull the merch store up and put it on there. Can we do that?
Yeah.
Can we put that in there? Boo Jazz is like, hell yeah. Hold on a second while I pull up our merch store link. And then, because why not have a link to the merch store? All right, here we go. Now, when you go to the merch store, it is the upper left-hand t-shirt, the large glass short sleeve unisex t-shirt. You can pick a color and a size, and then once you do that, get that to me with an address, and we will have that on its way to you. Congratulations on your shirt. Let's get back to Pam Glick for a few minutes because we got to shut this down. It is 9:30.
I love this painting.
It's a great painting.
Yes.
It's a great painting.
There's so much going on in this.
But what I love now is that that space that Sculptore mentioned earlier, that was sort of being accentuated by that mark, is now there's like a mitigation process going on in that, right? That they're sort of much closer together in terms of front to back space. The relationship seems a much more success. Not that the other ones were not successful, but I like the harmony that exists in this relationship, right? I really find it to be kind of strong. I also like the kind of looseness that's in that ground space, that yellow tannish ground space. It's very satisfying over the other marks.
Yeah. I actually like what the marks are doing with my eyes, because it's funny because they're black and white and they're on this cream background, and there's almost that void of color. It's not quite there, but then you see these little beautiful glimpses of this blue and nectarine color coming through, and those keep catching my eye in these like really prismatic, deceptive kind of ways almost, even though it's clearly there, but it reminds me of, you know, like a mirage or something like that.
Yeah, so, it pulls on you.
And it's so gorgeous. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, Memory Vessel mentions that she likes this one a lot, like this discerning composition. Like this discerning composition islands. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and all of a sudden,
a lot of spatial references going on in there as well.
And from a shape standpoint, each one now kind of has its own uniqueness, whereas before those patterned lines kind of contributed to an overall sort of texture ground. Now all of a sudden they kind of each have their own individual life. Like the letter forms now have this kind of new space to sort of swim in. Scultori says, reminds me of Albers, who wanted to challenge the viewer's understanding of what they feel or see. Well, yeah, I think that's actually a perfect reference. And because Pam is sort of shifting gears in the way in which she applies these things, you start to get comfortable, or you start thinking about one way of looking at it, and now we've got to move into a whole new way of looking at it.
Right.
But the same tools are being employed, right? Which is also really exciting.
Yeah, and the way that she's using lines, the contours give it dimension too. Like some things definitely feel like they're lying on top of things. Like I'm looking at the lower left corner there, and some of these, the little circle and half moon here, it looks like it's lying on top of all the other stuff, and she's got some fainter lines going on to give it some depth as well, like right up in here.
Yeah, that's exactly what One Good King just said in the comments. I love how the brush width creates a topography.
Yes,
right?
It does.
And that's really evident in that lower left corner. All right, let's pull up a couple more. I'm going to kind of go... I really wanted to talk about this one for a minute. Okay. Because there's just... I think there's a couple, and I don't want to necessarily keep going to references, but I kind of had to think about this for a second when I saw that red-blue dashed line that exists in this. Okay. And the way in which the triangle is created in that left corner. You know what this is?
The left corner.
It's an envelope. Do you remember the envelopes that used to have that blue and red dashed line around the edge?
Yes.
It feels like this was a drawing that might have been done on a scrap envelope. It just feels that way to me. Maybe. It feels like it's got the hallmarks of that thing. And so on top of that, it looks like it's done on a piece of like BFK Reeves printmaking paper, right? Because of that massive deckled edge along the bottom. And so... But that deckled edge also, in a weird kind of way, references a torn open envelope. And I can't help but think of that, how there's this sort of useless piece of discarded paper by the phone that she doodled on. And in the scaling up of that thing, she managed to maintain the sort of essence of its original surface. In a non-referential or minimally referential way. And no, I don't feel like I've done something special by noticing the trick, even if it is in play here. But that's what I'm getting from it. I really enjoy the reference back to the, I think it's an airmail envelope that actually has that kind of a blue and red line. But Mom says, reminds me of a fingerprint. Yeah, actually, we touched on that earlier, and I really like the notions of fingerprint from an identity standpoint in this.
Well, I'm also seeing some typography, almost like nonsense letters in some of her mark making too. Just as an aside, I'm like, is that an H? What are we seeing here? But anyway, that's an aside.
Well,
But this is a great
because
piece.
those marks imply that, right? John Park says, okay, now I am seeing the envelope. An envelope with the black and white graphic is abstracted stamp, oversized. Yeah, yeah. One Good King says, narratively, it's like the Google map got zoomed out from the earlier work. Oh, that's interesting.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
So, okay, so let's just kind of like wrap it up, because I think that, you know, when we go through some of these works, and I'm not even going to start to like dig into each of these in a deeper sort of sense, but I love her sense of play, her sense of mark making, her sense of humor, her sense of depth. Like, and I don't mean depth in this kind of like, oh wow, she's really good at creating dimensionality. There is a very non-traditional, unexpected sense of layered space that she's able to create in these marks. And it's not careful, right? And I love that it's not careful, because all of a sudden I'm able to sort of find these beautiful relationships, these beautiful transparencies in something that happens as quick as that drawing that happens on the phone.
It's very confident.
Well, yeah, absolutely. But there's this kind of like, she finds that, what is it I'm trying to say? Scaling something up requires a whole lot of care, right? In order to get it right. These feel scaled up, but without that care. And the lack of that care is not a bad thing in the slightest. It shows that the intuition and the way the drawing necessitates this kind of like flow of ideas is happening on any scale for her, right? And that feels really good to me. I mean, look at this.
Yeah, this one's gorgeous.
Oh my God, this is the last one I'm going to show, because this one blows my head off. Actually, there is one other reference I want to really quick touch on before we go, and that is the fact that, no, I'm not going to even go there. I had a Helen Frankenthaler I wanted to throw up there, because I thought of Frankenthaler when I was thinking of flatness in the painting as an object, and how that sort of staining of a canvas tries to defy that, and how Pam Glick's work finds a way to sort of defy that, but in a completely different manner, right? It's almost as if she's found a way to channel through or chisel through to the drawing with these paintings. So.
And that's gorgeous. I just love that one.
Oh my God.
I love the palette. I love the
Such a great painting.
Yeah.
Such a great painting.
Such a great painting.
So we're sweet on Pam Glick.
Yes.
Let's see what's in the comments real quick. Memory Vessel says, the envelope with postage, vintage letter. Yes, you fold it after you write inside. That's right.
Oh yeah, I
think it's
that.
careful in its rhythmic marks. Like a quilt.
Like a quilt.
Loved both artists tonight. Great show as usual. Really, oh, you guys are too much. You guys are too much. We appreciate that, of course. Of course. So let's see. You know, one thing we've always done is we've always done this kind of, where are my buttons here? We've always done this kind of like, we keep the next artist a secret.
Yeah.
And you know what that allows us to do? That allows us to change the artist.
It does.
Which has been a problem.
Yeah. It's nice being
not
overly committed.
We changed to Pam Glick this week because we had someone else on the calendar.
We did have somebody else on the
calendar.
calendar.
And I'm really glad we did this.
I'm thrilled we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
However, I think we should tell them who we're showing next week. You don't remember, I do.
I don't. I wrote it down though.
I remember who we're showing.
Who are we showing?
Alan Wexler.
Oh, that's correct. Yes.
So next week, we have an artist who by education has an architecture degree from RISD, but works sculpturally through architectural sensitivities. His name is Alan Wexler. He is brilliant. Okay, this is going to be a great show next week. I cannot wait to visit his work, and I think you should all join us.
And now we're committed.
Now it's on.
We can't escape.
It's on the video. We can't change.
We can't
change because we are used to doing that. Many of us like lock it in.
Yes.
One Good King says, great show. One Good King, thank you so much for your comments tonight. John and Jess Park, thank you so much. Ben, Mom, Pumpkin Audrey, Dave, David Backus, Josh Vogelin, Glenn, 63,
Hamlet.
Memory Vessel, Hamlet. I don't know if I forgot any of you. Scultore. Oh my God.
Yeah, a lot of people tonight.
Scultore. So many great
fun.
people. I'm really glad that it feels like I don't want summer to end.
It's like our Tuesday night hangout.
But I like this, and I feel like, it's we're getting back into the swing.
Yeah.
The end of summer swing. All right, everybody. I saved just enough of this resin.
I drank your resin. I got 2 drops left.
So that we could have some form of toast at the end of this thing.
Yes.
Boo Jazz, I forgot about you. Congratulations on winning that shirt.
Yeah.
And we will all see you next week. Thanks for coming.
Yes.
Stay cool.
Yes.
Cheers.
Cheers.
All right. Take it easy, everybody.